show of hands, how many people here either have an app, are developing an app, or work for a company whose major product is an app? So it's probably everyone in the room. And the thing is, everyone has an app. So and it's getting younger and younger. It's not just like nerdy tech kids like myself. It's becoming moms and dads, grandmas, frat kids. Everyone wants an app, and it makes sense. The payouts are huge for the ones that succeed. And the market's becoming very saturated as a result. You have things like Parse, which is great and enables people to set up backends in a matter of seconds. You have higher level programming languages like Swift, which allow people to write code almost as if it's just talking English to the computer. So the issue is retention. How do you retain these users? A lot of people get downloads, they get people on their app, but then the issue is they're not staying. For whatever reason, there's user churn. So there's a chart to basically give you an idea of how big of an issue it is. 77% of apps, average apps lose, or the average app loses 77% of their DAUs just 3 days after install, which is pretty serious. Imagine, like 3/4 of your user base just gone. And there's a clear correlation between the top apps, the top 10, the next 50, next 100, and next 5,000 in terms of retention. So what can you do? The biggest thing is stop adding features and start retaining users. So it sounds easier than it is maybe. People don't know where to start. But it's actually not that hard. There's a lot of very low level things you can do that are quick. You can have them done by tomorrow, and that'll significantly increase user retention. And we did all these at my company Ponder, and it's resulted in over a 3 times increase in user retention. So I'm just going to go through a couple quick things. These are all it's going to be kind of fast, high level, and then hopefully you guys can use these in your own apps. So onboarding. So everyone's seen the traditional walkthrough screen when you download an app. But the fact of the matter is most people don't actually read the stuff, and they go through it, and then they have no idea how to use the app if that's the only thing guiding the users. So what can you do? Bring the onboarding to the app itself. So this is an example. Vine does it really well. They have a traditional walkthrough flow at the beginning. You swipe through, but then once you're in the app, they hold your hand the first time, and new to Vine, this is how you make a post. They have little popover tips, and all these things are very, very easy to do. So here's a snippet of code we actually use for my app Ponder. Literally under 10 lines of code, took us 10 seconds to integrate, and it's made users significantly more retained. It makes them understand the app more. And overall, we've seen a very, very good increase in retention just by doing something simple like this. The next thing is user permissions, and this is more of an iOS issue, but I'm sure everyone's seen an app where you download, and on launch, you ask for location permission, notification permission, address book permission, social security permission, it seems like, so everything, right? And that's just not a good way to get people to say yes. It's scary. It drives users off. It makes this trust issue between you and the user. So, and this is what they have to do. So they say no, right? They have to close the app, go to settings, navigate to privacy, find your app, enable permissions for everything that shouldn't have even been disabled in the first place. So how do you fix that? The most obvious thing, and it's amazing that more apps don't do this, but it's just asking for it contextually in the right context, right? So you go to the camera screen on a photo sharing app, that's when you should be asking for the camera permission, not on launch, right? So, and then on top of that, instead of just asking for permission on a system level initially, you can just have a dummy alert. So like this app Cluster, they have a good TechCrunch article on this actually as well. They just integrated a custom dummy alert, let Cluster access your photos, and then if they say no, you can still ask them later on. If they say yes, you actually ask them at the system level, and people can enable it, and they've actually seen a 99% of people, acceptance rate of people allowing access that way versus around 50-50 before. And then also, if you're working with an iOS app, just something simple like adding a description on the system permission thing. I don't know how many of you are iOS developers specifically, but you can basically have a little description on why you need access, and providing context for all these things is essential for one, creating trust between the user, and then two, actually getting them to say yes. So sort of going on from onboarding, it's creating a great user experience, right? So it seems obvious, and the thing is that I think most developers focus on adding features. And as a developer, I know it's fun. You want to add, this, this, and this, and you don't really want to go back and then focus a lot of time on something that is only going to be seen one time by the user for the onboarding or something that that's already there. But so for Ponder, what we did was we literally just add some parallax scrolling to our collection views of images, and this is roughly 20, 25 lines of code. We calculate the position here, and then adjust the images here. So it's very simple. I don't know if you guys are familiar with parallax scrolling, but it's a very nice effect. It gives the app a much more fluid feel. This took less than 10 minutes to do, and it's changed the whole feel of the entire app. So compare this to going out and building a new feature, testing it, debugging it for a week or so. It's a much more efficient use of time, and it makes the whole app just seem more polished. So what you have now, I think, in most cases, is usually pretty solid. If you have an idea and you release it, it's not working, it's probably not the idea. And it's not the features or a lack of features. It's sort of the whole experience, and you can improve that pretty easily just based off of a couple lines of code. That being said, don't lose focus. So obviously stick to what you're good at. Play around with stuff, tweak stuff, see what you can do with code. There's a lot of fun, magical things you can do. But I know myself, I get very distracted sometimes and start trying to design stuff, and it ends up being a complete waste of time. So stick with what you're good at and what's going to drive retention. But beyond that, just try to obviously stay focused. The last major thing is iterate fast. So this seems obvious, but it's amazing to me how many apps don't have a way to just do hot fixes on the fly. So let's say you have a typo, a glaring typo on the walkthrough screen. You need to be able to change that immediately and not have to wait through Apple's 7 to 10 day review process and hope that the Apple gods bless your app with approval. So what we use is an app called, or a service called Optimize. There's a million out there that do the same thing, but it basically allows us to do on-the-air changes. We can change a button color. We can change copy. We can do really anything, like basic UI changes. And that's been incredibly helpful in terms of iterating fast, moving fast. Along those lines, and Optimize supports this as well, is A/B testing. So it's a very obvious sort of basic thing you can do, but a lot of people don't utilize it. It's amazing how a simple change of a button color or text can increase funnel completion rate significantly. But sort of going off of A/B testing is this new sort of emerging idea that big companies like Facebook are using all the time, but I haven't seen any startups use, and that's feature flagging and feature rollouts. So instead of building a feature, testing it internally in-house, it seems great, you release it, right? And then all of a sudden it seems to crash on everyone's phone. It was fine before, you release it, it crashes. I'm sure everyone's experienced that. You have to do a emergency update, submit an expedited request, and it's really stressful. It's just not a good thing overall. So what you can do actually is just flag entire new sections of code. Say you create a new class, you create a new feature, flag that as an A/B test essentially, right? And then you can roll it out to a subset of users, 5% of people. If it's crashing, if it's not working, you can always pull it on the fly, server side. If it's not working for certain device versions, you can segment based on that. But it's a way to basically have this second layer of protection between you and the final version. The last thing in terms of iteration is the rollout schedule. So a lot of apps, the release schedule looks something like this. It's basically you set a date, like this month, this day, well, we're going to try to release this feature, right? And then if the feature's not done by that day, you either choose to cobble up the code and mash something together and release it, and it's probably error-prone, probably bugs. You create a lot of technical debt, or you push back the deadline indefinitely. 1 day turns into 2 days, turns into a week, and then at that point you're like, oh, I already waited this long, might as well add this feature, and you kind of go in this continuous cycle where you're just not releasing new versions, and you kind of just get in this endless loop. And I've seen a lot of teams get in this habit. So to counteract that, there's been this trend towards essentially what's called a train station release schedule. So I don't know how many people here are familiar with that, but basically the idea is instead of releasing based on features, you're releasing based on a set schedule, right? So you say on the 1st and the 16th of every month, I'm shipping the app no matter what. And then basically, if the feature's ready, you put it, you add it to the master branch and ship it. If it's not ready, no stress. You don't have to cobble together a new version, but you just do it on the next update. So it's a way to ensure you have constant changes. You're not going to get stuck in this loop, and it allows teams to iterate much faster. So yeah, doing those three things: onboarding, improving your existing user experience, not adding new features, but just improving what you already have by just a couple tweaks, a couple lines of code, and then fast iteration. That's going to put you ahead of 99% of apps. And as simple as these things are, we've already seen, like I said, a 3x increase in user retention for our app Ponder. I hope you guys can all implement that stuff as well. The average American spends more time on tech and media than work and sleep, so I hope that with these tips, you guys can help become part of that time. And thank you. I think we have time for questions. Cool.
All right, does anybody have any questions for William? Get those hands up high, because it's kind of hard to see up here. There's a mic in the back, too, so don't be shy. Really? This is the problem of mornings.
I have one over here.
Okay, go. And you'll be next.
So what were some of the key changes that you made, and how big of a difference did that make to your retention?
The biggest thing is, I think, user onboarding. I think a lot of people don't focus on that enough. I encourage everyone to delete your app from your phone, reinstall from the App Store as a new user, and see what that experience is like. A lot of times there's empty screens and not much explanation. There's a lot of hand-holding, I think, that needs to go on that first time that the user downloads the app. We've actually ended up spending around just as much time on our first-time user experience as we have on the final product itself, because that first time kind of determines the whole future of your app and that user's mind. It's whether or not they come back. It's whether or not they're an engaged user, whether or not they're interested, or tell their friends about it. So onboarding, walkthrough stuff, kind of holding their hand that first time, I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen help out. And that directly, when we started adding that stuff, that resulted in around the 150% increase and in like total retention.
Were you able to measure the retention effect of something like the parallax, scrolling on its own, or is that just something that adds up?
That's a little harder. I mean, obviously you can do, you can look at it before and after adding those features. I think that's more just a whole, like a long-term sort of perk for the user. It just makes the app that much nicer. There's a lot of apps out there, and it makes it sort of stand out from the competition. I don't know if there's a direct impact with that as much as there is with like new user onboarding, but it helped out. It wasn't significant, but with the amount of time it takes, I would encourage you to do it.
Hi, Suraj from Grace Studios. You talked about a lot about retention, how to keep your app users active. But how do you win back your app users that already left the app?
Right. The biggest thing is getting push notification permissions. So we actually, I don't cover that too much, but having sort of this onboarding flow with push notifications has been significantly, has been very effective with us. So if someone downloads the app, assuming they still have the app on their phone and give us permission, and they haven't come back in 3 days, we just notify them, hey, check out what's trending nearby on Ponder, and we A/B test these notifications and see which one works best. So that's definitely, I think, by far the #1 thing. If you can get notifications, permission on the first time, that'll help out tremendously. And then beyond that, it's tough. It's really just making that first-time experience solid, making them want to come back.
Any more questions? Get those hands up.
In the middle. Here, got you right here.
Hi. Did you mention an alternative to the beta review process of Apple?
The beta review. What do you mean?
Yeah, the test flight stuff, the Applebot
Right.
test flight to distribute beta builds.
What we do is we have an enterprise account with Apple. So I don't know, I think Android's much more flexible, but with Apple, you can sign up for an enterprise account. It's $300 a year. You basically get to sort of say you are this big company and they'll let you in. But if you do that, you can basically distribute the app to any device instantly. We use Hockey app as our instead of test flight, and it allows us to do instant updates without having to go through the Apple review process for anything, for like beta testers.
Yeah, okay, because they have the beta review process now, but it
Right.
actually still takes
It still
about
takes
same
around 24
time,
hours, I think, usually, at least for us. But yeah, I would sign up for an enterprise account, and that's been really helpful for us.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and I think that wraps it up. William, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.